Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're able to see my screen. So in the diffraction theory, the question that we ask is the following. Suppose here, this is an opening, this is an aperture, this is a 2D aperture. And here, let me just show, this is an X prime, Y prime, Z plane, or it's a X prime, Y prime plane. This is a plane on which we have some aperture. Now, aperture can be like an opening in a otherwise opaque wall, or it could just be, it could be an intensity amplitude variation or phase variation. The simplest that we are doing here, these will all be amplitude variation, which means you have an opening of this type or a general type, and the other parts are completely opaque. There's no transmission. So transmission is 1 in this region and transmission is 0 in this region. Okay. So or you can just have a planar object here. You know, the light may be falling on it in from any direction. That doesn't really matter. But just a planar object here. Or light could be also be coming from this side if it is a transparent object. Even if it's not transparent, even if it's a reflective object, the diffraction theory works the same way. In that case, you know, you may have light coming on it from any direction, and then this object will then be reflecting. Okay, so the point is, if this object is scattering either due to reflection of light or transmission of light, the question that we ask in diffraction theory is, what is the intensity at this XY plane that is at the distance Z, you know, from this aperture. Okay, so we have this aperture or a planar reflective object, and we ask the question that because of the scattering from this object, what exactly is the intensity pattern that we are going to obtain at this XY plane that is at distance Z from this object. Okay, so this is the basic question, and I hope the question is clear. If not, just feel free to interrupt me anywhere, because probably this is not been done in the theory course, so many of you may have questions here. All right, so this is a two-dimensional object. So let's define the coordinate. I'm taking rho prime as the coordinate for this, the x prime y prime coordinate, and the rho xy I'm taking for the observation plane coordinate. Rho is xy, rho is a vector. Okay, lambda is the wavelength of light, and k, which is the magnitude of the wave vector, which is just 2 pi by lambda. I mean, you know all this. Now, the question is, what is the intensity pattern at this plane due to scattering from this object? Okay, now how do we do it? So I will start from what's called the Huygens-Fresnel principle. Okay, now deriving the Huygens-Fresnel principle in the most rigorous fashion will take a while, but we will not do that. But I will try to get to the Huygens-Fresnel principle in a slightly non-rigorous way, which should be a little more, which should be a bit intuitive. So what we have here, what I have here is the same picture, same source, the plane. Now what we are taking is, let's just take a tiny point source on that plane. Okay, or you can also imagine this to be we can also imagine this to be a tiny area element. Okay, which is this is located at rho prime, and the area is, the element is d rho prime. Okay, so let's consider what happens due to a point source, which could be, we can also think of it as a tiny area element, but let's just take it as a point source. So just a point source right here. So if I have a point source at rho prime, what would be, and let's say it's a unit amplitude point source at rho prime, then what would be the amplitude at rho due to this point source? Okay, that's the question. What, just a point source at rho prime, what would be the amplitude at rho due to this point source? So this we can write as follows. Since this is just a since it's a unit amplitude source, so we don't need to worry about its amplitude, just one. And we know that this a point source emits as kind of like a spherical waves. So this spherical, this kind of propagate and expand, and the spherical waves then can be written as e to the I k r. Okay, where r is the distance between rho prime and this rho, and rho is just observation point. This is just a single observation point. Okay, r is the separation between the two. So e to the I k r, that is the spherically, propagating wave, and then r divided by r. This is for because the amplitude will be decreasing, by that scaling. So just e to the I k r by r. So if I have a unit amplitude point source at this point rho, then the amplitude at rho will be e to the I k r by r. Okay, this quantity, and this is just coming. If you take a point source as a spherically outgoing wave, then this will be the amplitude of that part. Fine. So now let's say instead of this being a point source, if it has some amplitude, and let's call it u rho prime, then the amplitude at rho will be this quantity. Okay, so if for a unit point source at rho prime, this is the contribution. For a quantity for the amplitude at rho prime being u rho prime, this is the amplitude at rho prime. Fine. Now this spherical wave, depending on which way it is going, I mean, if at this rho, whether it is arriving in a straight line, well, this here it is arriving at an angle theta, as I've shown here. At this point, it is arriving at an angle theta. So if it is at an angle theta, I should have mentioned this before introducing u rho prime, but that's okay. So it will have, this will be cosine theta. Okay, all I'm trying to say is unit amplitude rho prime, unit amplitude point source here, this is the contribution. But if this contribution is falling at rho at an angle theta, then that contribution will be cosine theta, multiplied with cosine theta. And now if the amplitude here is u rho prime, then this whole thing is the contribution at rho prime, rho. Okay, so this is the contribution at rho due to a point source at rho prime that has amplitude this. Fine. Now if we have a source of some size with area given by this, then what is the contribution at rho? So that contribution would be you take the tiny area element, which is the d2 rho prime, and then you integrate over the whole area. Let's call this A, that's the whole area. Okay, and so this actually would be the total amplitude at rho prime due to this source, due to this planar source having amplitude u rho prime. Is this fine? There is one more which I will not explain, but I will write for the sake of completion. This is 1 over I lambda. This part let me kind of skip as to how this comes about. But if you have a planar source with amplitude u rho prime, then sorry, this should be. Then the amplitude at a distance z away from that plane will be u rho. Okay, so this is the Huygens-Fresnel principle. This is the general diffraction formula. So now if you know any planar source, you just put it here in this formula, calculate this integral and get this. Okay, you're done. But again, this is easier said than done. So we cannot handle this formula in its most general form. So typically we take this in within various approximations. And now I want to go through those approximations. But before that, let's just, this is written in rho prime coordinates. So let's just write this in Cartesian coordinate. Okay. So first of all, this cosine theta that we have over here, this we can write as cosine theta equal to Z by R. Why? Because this is my theta, this is my Z, and that's R. So cosine theta equal to Z by R is how we can actually write it. Okay, so this is fine. Now let's insert this in this equation, cosine theta Z by R here. So I have a Z out here, I lambda there. U rho prime I'm writing as U x prime y prime. E to the I kr for now remains e to the I kr. R is now R square because this Z went there, and this R multiplied with this gives me R square. Okay, and this area element I'm writing as dx prime dy prime. Okay, and this integration is understood to be over the area of the aperture or object. Okay, so this is the form of the diffraction integral, Huygens-Fresnel diffraction integral. This is still the most general form, no approximations here. What is R? R is the separation between rho prime and rho. Okay, how can we write it? So R is Z square. I mean, this is the distance between these 2 points. That's a standard formula. X minus x prime square, y minus y prime square, and z squared. There's no z prime. We are using the same z, so that's why this is just z. Okay, so we can write again R as z 1 plus. This is just rewriting it. No approximation anywhere so far. So this R we can write as this. Now we'll make one approximation. This is called Fresnel approximation. Okay, this approximation is, does essentially this term is bigger than 1 or much bigger than 1, and this term is also much bigger than 1. So both these terms are much bigger than 1, or in other words we can write that z square is much larger than x minus x prime whole square, or this z, just the distance between the 2 points, is much larger than this separation between x and x prime points that one considers, and again also larger than y and y prime separation that one considers. So that is the approximation we make. Now suppose we make this approximation, then through binomial expansion we can write this R as this z over here. We just open this up, multiply that by half. That's it, x minus x prime whole square by 2z, y minus y prime whole square by 2z. Okay, so this is the Fresnel approximation, or this is the Fresnel approximation. So this is the expression for R that we are going to put in the exponent. That means here. But in the denominator over here, we'll keep R as Z. So this is even worse approximation than this. But this is in the exponential thing varies very rapidly because we have this periodic term. But this won't change as quickly. So this will be enough that if we approximate R with just Z. Okay, so with these approximations, we can write our field at uxy at this 1 minus I lambda z, that is just directly coming. Where is that coming? Z remains Z, and R square we say becomes Z square. So Z square gives me a Z. So that gives me I lambda Z. Fine. Ux prime y prime remains as such. Dx prime dy prime is what it is. And then R, I have opened it up as e to the I k and R. So this R is this quantity, which is after Fresnel approximation, z plus x minus x prime whole square by 2z, y minus y prime by whole square 2z. Okay, so this is called the Fresnel diffraction integral or Fresnel diffraction formula. So if you have an aperture, an opening or any object that emits light, and if you are kind of close to that object, that's called the near field. Because here what this essentially means is Z has to be larger than kind of like the dimension of the object. So if this is the size of the object, then if you are at Z, which is much larger than this dimension of this object, then this approximation kind of works. So then this is the formula that you have to kind of work with. This is called the Fresnel diffraction integral. Okay, so that's the first approximation. Our aim is to get to what's called the Fraunhofer diffraction integral, and for that we'll need one more set of approximation. But before that, we want to rewrite this equation or the formula. So for that, let's open this up. X minus x prime whole square by 2z. We are writing as x square by 2z, x prime square by 2z, and x prime by z. So this is just x square plus x prime square plus twice x prime. Just simple. Same thing for y minus y prime by 2z. This is how we can expand it. Once expanded, let's put these back in this formula. Then what do we get? Of course, we have our e to the I lambda z. This e to the I k z, since this doesn't depend on x prime y prime, we can take it outside the integral. So that's what comes here. Ux prime y prime, that remains here. Now, in here, I have contributions like x square by 2z, y square by 2z. These do not depend on x prime, y prime. Hence, I can take it out. So these are now e to the I k 2z, x square plus y square. That's outside the integral. And of course, then I have these 4 terms left. They all depend on x prime, y prime. So I cannot take them out of the integral. So what I'm left with is x prime, y prime, e to the I k 2z, x prime square plus y prime square, and e to the I k by z, x prime, y prime. Of course, this integration element. And this is understood to be over the area of the object or the scatterer or the aperture. Fine. So this is our formula. Again, this is still the Fresnel diffraction integral. No approximation beyond the first set of approximation we made. But now we will make a new approximation, new set of approximation, which we are calling, which is called Fraunhofer approximation. What is that approximation? This approximation says that essentially we want to make sure that this term is equal to 1. How do we make sure that this term is equal to 1? This we can do when we say that, this quantity is essentially 0. Okay, so that means this quantity is much smaller than 1. And again, I k z pi square, this quantity is also much smaller than 1. So then kx prime square 2z much smaller than 1. K y prime square 2z much smaller than 1. So these are the two approximations. If we make, then we have that this term is actually equal to 1. Another way of writing this would be that this z is much larger than kx prime square by 2. Z is much larger than ky prime square by 2. So this is the Fraunhofer approximation. And with Fraunhofer approximation, what do we get? It is the same thing, exact same thing, except that we don't have this term. Okay, this is gone. So now we can write that integral or the formula as uxy. This term stays. It is the I k z I already have. These are all from the these are all as it is, they're from there, no change. This comes over there, and that comes over there. So it is exactly that, except that this term is missing. Okay, so now I have this is my Fraunhofer diffraction formula. So this says that if z satisfies these conditions, that the separation between the object and the observation point is large enough such that these conditions are satisfied, then we can write the diffraction formula in this form. This says what? That if I have a planar object u with amplitude u x prime y prime, this is a planar object, then the amplitude at a plane which is z distance away from this plane, this source, this object, this aperture, is uxy. And how is it given? It is given as an integral over this object. Okay, excellent. Now what we can actually measure in experiments, any questions up to this point? Fine. So what we do measure in experiments is not amplitude, we always measure intensity. So how do we calculate intensity? So intensity is simply the amplitude square, at least at this level, which we can write as u star u. And if you write that, you can see all this term these are phase term. They have this I here. Well, not this one, but this one is exponential. This is also exponential I type. So if you take a u star u, the mod square, these terms will actually go away. So in the intensity expression, this term will not show up. So intensity at the observation plane is 1 over lambda square z square, and then this integral u x prime y prime, it is the I k z x prime y prime dx prime dy prime. Okay. Now here, let me ask, how many of you have done Fourier transform?
Sir, by the way, won't the lambda square z square be out of the mod square?
Yeah, you can take that out of mod square. No issue there. Yes.
Because otherwise.
Yeah. So, sorry. Okay. I know what you mean. Fine. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. Okay. So how many of you have done Fourier transform? Nobody? Has anybody done Laplace transform? No one? No math method in first year, Laplace transform? Ooh. All right. So let me, okay, then this is an integral. Well, everybody has done the integral of type e to the kx, right? E to the kx dx integration.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. So anytime you have this type of integral, e to the I, this integral quantity, this x prime and something else, this is called the Fourier transform. Okay. So you can just right now remember this as just a Fourier transform, or if even if you don't remember them, that's okay. It is just a simple integral where we have something over here and this needs to be integrated. Okay. But in Fourier transform, what we have here, this will be very, very important quantity. For electrical engineers or people who are doing quantum mechanics, the next semester you will be doing quantum mechanics. I mean, those will be taking that PHY 204 course. And the electrical engineering, the physics, quantum mechanics, this is all you have everywhere Fourier transform. So this is one very, very important transform that you actually have. Okay. So that's why actually we thought we will introduce it here so that when you do quantum mechanics next semester, it will be, you will actually have a prior start, as well as when we do all these problems of single slit, single wire, double slit, multi-slit, using this way, it is much, much, much more easier, which you will appreciate, I think, once we start doing the diffraction problems. Okay, so coming back to this is the expression that we have. This still looks a little kind of daunting because this is a 2D expression. But suppose we have an object, ux prime, y prime, which can be factored or broken up as ux prime, uy prime. So it has x dependence, y dependence, if that can be separated, suppose. Okay, then we can write this integral, as two separate integral. Again, somebody will say that I should have this outside. Okay, so this is then ixy is then two separate integrals. One is over x and the other one is over y. Okay, so now if I have just a one-dimensional object, well, there is no object that is actually one-dimensional, but you can approximate something as a one-dimensional object. For example, if you have a wire which is very long in one direction, but of course it is very thin, so it's very narrow in the other direction. So for all practical purpose, we can actually consider it as a one-dimensional object. Similarly, like a single slit, that can also be considered as a one-dimensional object. So for that one-dimensional object, let's say if that dimension is x, then we can see that this u, the amplitude that we had over here, that can be written as this. I'm using proportionality because I don't want to continue with this, but I'm just using this proportionality. So this ux prime e to the I kxz x prime. Okay, so this is the integral. So this is called Fourier transform, but if you haven't done it properly, no need to kind of get scared. It is just that if I have a one-dimensional object with this amplitude, the diffraction or the intensity pattern at the distance z away from the source is is given by this, the amplitude, where I have it is the I kx z x prime dx prime. Okay, and I think everybody knows how to do the exponential type integral once we are given the limits, which we will do in a while. Okay, so this is the diffraction integral. This is the Fraunhofer diffraction for a one-dimensional object. Okay, now let's do a few problems, and then I think you will realize how important this is. If you do it this way, I mean, this is the only formula that you will have to ever remember. You will not need to, you know, remember anything else, and then everything will become quite intuitive. So let's just do a very simple example. This example I have done is for a slit. Now, what is a slit? Slit, as you would know, it will be something. I mean, we will have, let's say, have an object, and then you have a tiny opening, right? And then this is all opaque. This is what we mean by slit. Okay, now for this slit, if we are to shine, you know, laser on it, since our laser is green, let's just do green. So if you have to shine laser on it, oops, we might put our laser like this. But for our laser, I mean, we will take this as a one-dimensional problem. Why? Because if we just go like this, if we take a cut like this, then what is the amplitude of this object? Okay, and here the size of the slit that we have is A. Okay, so if that is the case, then this slit that we have over here, this I can represent. So this is my x prime, and that's my amplitude. So this I can represent by this function. What is this function? This function is 0 everywhere, except between minus a by 2 to a by 2, where it is 1. Okay, this basically says the transmission through the slit is 1, otherwise it is 0. Okay, and this I'm representing it as a function like this, which is my ux prime function. Is this fine with everyone? Or anybody has any question here? Okay. So this is how you mathematically model this object called single slit. Okay, so full transmission, that is 1 over this range minus a by 2 to a by 2, and no transmission otherwise. Okay, so we are just taking it as a one-dimensional problem. So if you have a one-dimensional problem, so now what happens to the for such an object placed here? Question is, what happens to the intensity at a plane xy, which is at location z? Okay, so that's a question. So we know that this is our diffraction formula. In that, we just need to put this and put the correct integral limit. So what do we have here is e to the I kz x prime dx prime, and x prime integral goes from minus a by 2 to a by 2. That's it, and that will give me 2x. Sorry, u of x. And let me do that integral. This is a simple integral that everybody has done. So again, no need to be scared with the name Fourier transform. This is as simple as this integral, at least for the slit. So this is this, that. I put in those integrals, limits. I get this, then this. And so that's my u of x, which is 2i sine kx twice za by kxz. And if you want to find the intensity, that is ux squared, then I get sine square kx twice za and kx twice z whole square. Okay, so this is the expression that I get. Is anybody familiar with this expression? Typically in the book, you can also do x by z. This will be sine theta, because if you go back to the original diagram, so that's my x, right? And that's my z. So x by z will be sine theta. So sometimes you will also write it as theta. But this is the general expression. You can also express this in terms of theta if you do x by z, and or you can write this kx a by twice z. as kz sine theta a. You can also put it as alpha. And this is also, sometimes you see the expression written in books. But this is the expression with all the relevant parameters of the problem. So you have z, that is the distance of the screen from where the object was kept. That's the x coordinate at the observation plane. A was the size of the slit, and that's it. And this is the intensity. Okay. So I guess everybody knows how this looks. Maybe I can draw. And this we'll see. So as a function of x, it will look something like. This doesn't go negative because I'm plotting the intensity. If I plot the amplitude, then it will go negative as well. Okay. So this is the diffraction pattern due to a single slit. Of course, you should plot it yourself to kind of verify, but you can, believe me on this. Let me actually plot it slightly differently. This is for some other purpose, which will be clear, let's say, in a moment. So okay, this is x, and this is here x. Okay, so this is the diffraction pattern due to a single slit. Again, here there was this lambda square z square, so that will change the expand or the whole diffraction pattern as we go in z. But we are not looking at this. We are right now just focusing on the functional dependence of that pattern, and this will be the functional dependence of the pattern. Fantastic. Let's do double slit as a second example. Now, what is a double slit? So double slit, as I was just drawing there last time, I mean, actually making this double slit, I mean, is not as easy, but well, theory wise is fine. So you have a slit like this and a second slit like this, and then rest all opaque. Okay, thickness of the slit or the size of the slit is A, slit width, and the separation between the slit is D. So again, if we are taking this as a one-dimensional problem, okay, then we can write this as or represent this as this function. Or I think you are mostly used to seeing the double slit, like this. Where this is the separation between the slit is D and the size of the slit is A. So that's how we do it as a one-dimensional problem. But this and this, I mean, any physical realization will look like this, but then this can be approximated as this to make it a one-dimensional problem. And once we have it like this I can represent in this way. So that's my x prime, that is the amplitude. So what do I have? So in this area, in this region, the transmission is 1. In this region, the transmission is 1. Otherwise, the transmission is 0. So what is that range? Of course, the width is A, separation is D. So this is minus D by A, this point, D minus A by 2 to D plus A by 2. Because this is D by 2, this is A by 2. So D by 2 minus A by 2 is D minus A by 2. Similarly, this is D plus A by 2. This one is minus D minus A by 2. This one is minus D plus A by 2. You probably have not formulated the Young's double slit this way, but if you do it in this way, we can just directly use the diffraction formula that we have just derived. Okay, so this is my Ux prime, and I just need to put this in the Fraunhofer diffraction formula that we derived. So then what is Ux? Ux is that integral, and that integral, since this has 2 range, so I can write that integral as these 2 separate integrals. Okay, e to the minus I kz x prime, going from minus D plus A by 2 to minus D minus A by 2, and then there's nothing over there. So it again starts from D minus A by 2 and goes up to D plus A by 2. Okay. Now the next thing is just to evaluate this integral. Just do the math. I am not going to go through all of this. Just this is the amplitude, and corresponding to the amplitude, if you look at, this is the intensity. Okay. Now I just want to compare this intensity with the intensity we derived just above. Sorry. Okay, this is the expression we had derived for the single slit, and this is the expression we have for the double slit. So if you notice, you find that the sine square kx by 2z a by kx by 2z whole square, this is the same expression as we have it over here. But in the double slit, we have this extra term, which is cosine kx by z times d by 2. Okay, so this is the diffraction pattern we already have. And then in addition, we have this cosine kx z. We have this d term. So this has a d dependence, no a dependence. This has a dependence, no d dependence. Okay, so what would be the pattern? Well, this is something I wanted to do, but I won't be doing it. So let me just remove it, or actually let's set it down. Okay, so the pattern that you will have is basically this diffraction pattern. Let me copy it from there. Paste it there. So that is the diffraction pattern you have. And in addition to the diffraction pattern, we also have this cosine term, which has this d dependence. So what does that do? So that will fill this diffraction pattern with what we are calling interference fringes. So because this, so you will have this overall sine squared, which is this function, and then we have this cosine, and which will give me something like this. Sorry, not very good. Okay, so if we had just a single slit, then this blue curve is the intensity pattern you would see at the xy plane, which is that distance away. But if we have the double slit, with slit width being a and the separation between the slit being d, then this yellow thing is the intensity pattern that we would see. You see that in this yellow curve, the envelope is still defined by this blue curve. Okay, so this is the diffraction pattern or the intensity pattern, interference pattern due to double slit. Okay, so I just wanted to, one thing I actually want to stress here is that when we say diffraction and interference, these are not two different things. It's the same thing. Interference term was more popular because when you just want to describe the interference of two separate waves, that's when the interference is called. But you can call everything as diffraction, and it is perfectly fine. Okay, and what plays the boss here? What plays the boss is this diffraction integral. So once you know the two-dimensional amplitude at the one plane, then the intensity at some other plane z distance away is given with this. And if you just have one dimension problem, this is the simple formula you can use. This formula will work for single slit, double slit, n slit, you name it. And it need not be just a slit. That means it need not be just a flat function. It can have some functional form as well, and it will work for everything. Okay, so let me stop here and take any question that anybody has. And then I can show you just a wire and a slit interference pattern that we have. Any question here?
Double slit, is it a cos square that you get? I think you've just written
Thank you,
cos.
thank you.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, that's a cos square. Okay. So now I was doing double slit in a different way, but let me just, I was sorry, I meant a single wire. Let me not do the single wire in the traditional way, but in, I mean, I won't be deriving it, but one thing you can see, if you actually have a single wire, or wire, need not be, I don't have to call it single. A wire is, you know, thin, something thin like this, right? So this is the opaque region, nothing, light doesn't pass through this. And otherwise it is completely transparent. Okay. And then you are going to shine light, a helium neon, sorry, the laser on it. Okay. So laser has this intensity pattern. So what the wire is essentially doing, can somebody see what's happening here? What the wire is essentially doing is blocking any light in this region, right? And these are all transparent region, okay? So if I draw a one-dimensional version of this, a cut through that, what do I get? Anybody?
You should have a well, I think.
Well, remember that the transmission here due to through wire is 0, and transmission here is 1.
Yeah. So there'll be a dip in the middle for A
So
distance.
is the opposite of the well. So kind of like you will have a, or I should draw it in green so that, right. Is that fine? So nothing goes in this range. This is transparent region, which is this. This is transparent region, which is this. And again, nothing goes here because there's no laser light, right? So you have transmission in this range, the region, this region, otherwise it is 0. So it is essentially a double slit. That's what I'm trying to say. As a wire through, if you're using helium neon laser or a laser with a small size, small beam size, then this will act like just like a double slit. Okay, so with that, let me just, how much time we have? Okay, maybe 5-10 minutes. So let me just do, simple demonstration of a wire and a slit. And I think we have to be very, innovative with these experiments because kind of resource we have is very limited. And so we will have to work with those resources. Okay. So let me turn on my other camera. And spotlight video. I guess hopefully you can see it. So first, let me just show you what I have done for the wire. You can see the single wire that I have. Okay, and for the single slit, this is what I've done. So I've taken these two glass pieces, and these blades go inside these. And with the rubber band, I can tighten them so that I can adjust the, it gives a much better control as far as adjusting the size of the slit. Okay, very fine control. And the glass, I have taken the 2 glass slide because once you have it pressed with 2 glass slide, the edges remain aligned. You see these edges are quite aligned. Okay, so let's do wire first, and then we'll do the Just turn off the light. That's my laser. Now we'll try to get this wire. Okay, so this is probably too bright, and the wire is maybe too thick for the diffraction effect. What you're probably seeing here is just a line, but in reality, I do see interference there. So if I bring my camera closer, you can see the interference. Can somebody see interference?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now I will just remove my screen and look at my wall, which is further away, and then it will be. Because I'll take my phone there because you can't see it. Very clear fringes. Of course, the central maximum is too bright, but very clear fringes that we have, and these are the orders of the diffraction that we have. So no, sorry, no, we are doing wire, and see, you should compare this with a double slit, and these are the fringe patterns that we have. And by taking the separation between the slit, sorry, between the fringes, you should be able to calculate the thickness of the wire, which could be compared more like with the separation between the two slits that it simulates. Okay, so next, let me just so this was the wire. Let me just now bring in the single slit. That's the whole experiment. Hopefully you can see. So here I will try to adjust the separation. You completely close it or just open just a tiny bit. Sorry. Again, you can't see the pattern, but it is there. And to make it leave, we will go to. Can you see the fringes?
Sir, it's visible, so we can see it.
Excellent. Now, I'll again go to larger Z, so that becomes much clearer. This is very nicely visible on my it's very nicely visible on my wall. So let me just click to there. See, that's a diffraction. Okay. Now, you cannot keep my camera there, but I will try to adjust the slit size by bringing this blade closer. Let me just bring it here so that you can also see what I'm doing. So let me just try to bring the blades closer. It's probably not visible there, but it has, I've brought them very close. So now if I bring my camera, you see these orders are quite far apart. My alignment has gotten disturbed a little bit, so these are not very nice symmetric orders that you see, but you do see that the separation has nicely kind of increased. If I try to bring in the fix the alignment a little bit. So I think whoever is doing it has to be very careful because you're working with two glass slides and the blade, and these can be very dangerous. You cut your finger very easily. You should be very careful. Okay, so this is the maximum I can actually get. Maybe you can even see it, but let me just bring the camera closer. So that's the central maximum and the other orders that I have. So it need not be this big. When you are doing experiment, it need not be with this big. And then when it's slightly smaller, it will be much more easier for you to control the state. Because you want to make sure the light is falling at 90 degrees and all that. And then usually things are very, very much cleaner. Let's do one last step. Okay, now we'll show again. Very clear diffraction orders that I can get. Now, by having some distance, the sense of the distance from the blade or the slit plane, and looking at the separation between the orders, you can actually find out theta, and from that you can actually find out what exactly is the separation between the slit. Okay. So I will stop here unless somebody has a question. Any question? Okay, so if not, then I think we are done, unless Harsha has something to add. Harsha, do we add something?
No, I think just a comment. You can see that you already did the single slit and the double slit. So they can keep increasing the number of slits and then see what happens. And that will get them to a grating. So that is something very neat that they can think about.
Yes. So now if you increase the number of slits, I mean, in that diffraction integral, or I think we'll do more fun stuff next time that, you know, just the dust particle kind of spread over, and then what is the diffraction pattern then that causes, and everything can be handled through that Fraunhofer diffraction formula. You don't need anything else. So hopefully that should be big.
I think the emphasis is that it is very simple. Light does something very simple, which is the two-dimensional Fourier transform. So I think that understanding it's 2D, it's a Fourier transform, and I think that I'm sure they will learn it in different subjects. I think Fourier transform at some point or other. Anand, I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks.
So again, any question? All right. So if none, I will stop here. I'll put this up on YouTube maybe by tonight, and I think this is due 2 weeks from now. Right. Okay. All right. Bye bye.